built in 1939, primarily to provide first aid to the factory. It would have looked very much in 1939 as it does today, traditionally, greened over with camouflage. It was not an air raid shelter. There were around 20 air raid shelters that were built in the area to protect the factory. The nearest one is about half a mile in that direction. Also in that direction was Newman's, who were building bomb shell cases for the war, and the Parnall factory were building gun turrets and Spitfire parts, which made this area a lovely target for the Germans. At the time, this factory had around 4,000 workers on the payroll. Just to give you some context, at that time, only 2,000 people were living in the entire town of Yate. So that's double the population working in this factory. The first aid unit would have given basic first aid to factory workers. Health and safety didn't exist at that time, goggles, all the lovely things we have today. So it would have been built to take glass out of eyes, to fix cuts and abrasions, light touch first aid. Alongside it would have also been a whole host of other first aid and safety precautions to keep the factory safe, including the air raid precaution unit and their warden, who would sound the alarm whenever there was a threat of invasion, so that the workers could quickly exit the factory and get inside the air raid shelters. There would have also been a fire service, a fire warden, and the home guard, who were a fantastic group of volunteers. If anybody's seen Dad's Army, they're also apparently hilarious. Who would have volunteered their time to protect the factory during an invasion. So we are going to go down inside the bunker in a moment. You've had a health and safety briefing. Mind your step, your heads along the way. There's some uneven floor, slippy floor, and some low surfaces, low ceilings. Bear with us a moment. We're just going to bring the previous tour out and then we'll welcome you in. So I'll just go and grab them. Hopefully they've not been lost.
It's not that big, is it?
Oh my hand. Oh my goodness, what did you get those for?
I took second place in like 20 or school.
Oh wow, what were you doing?
We were doing
Right, gather in everybody. David's just grabbing a quick drink. This is cool. Come see this bit of where Mum went, right? Didn't see this last time, did you? Oh, there was one moment. Come on in, come on in. Creeping up to me from the other way. Right, come on in. Come have a look.
Always recognise at least somebody. Right, well, welcome to the First Aid Unit, Parnall Aircraft Limited, 1941. Some of that's 1941, but some bits of it do look a bit like, or are from that 39 to 41 period. So basically, it's a first aid unit for upwards of 2 years, up until the bombing raids of February and March 1941. So, just to say, it's a first aid unit, it's not a hospital. While the bombing raids were going on, it could be said to be a makeshift hospital. It wasn't an air raid shelter, although I can't hand on heart say nobody ever tried to get in here if in the midst of a bombing raid. But principally that's what it was. It was part of a web of emergency services. I think Leah may have talked to you about Home Guard, ARP, and the fire station here, anti-aircraft guns, searchlight, you know, the whole panoply of what we think of would be in a major industrial site. So the photographs here, this is the railway line, and this is the top end of the factory. I think Leah was saying about how big the factory was, 4,000 people, not all the time, 4,000 on the payroll, but still a pretty big operation. And that airfield where the gun turrets and the printed products would be either tested or whatever. This is Long's Drive, for those of you wanting to navigate where you are. And there's a pillbox in the distance there. And here We've got our first aid shelter actually on the photograph, which is great. So if you came past and saw it's got a concrete lintel, were you shown the? No. Anyway, on that side there was another kind of entrance, and that's it. We will see it in a minute. These are air raid shelters, just to the immediate north of this road. That's basically where that modern bit of factory is. But you can see there all the bombing that took place there. Perhaps at this point I ought to mention the bombing. So, darkest day of Yate's history was the bombing of the Parnall aircraft. 27th of February 1941, 52 people died, 150 injured. A week later, 7th of March, 3 more people died and 20 more injured. But this, as you can see from that photograph, it basically devastated the factory, and it was out of operation for 3 years. And further operations took place at about 20 other sites in the South Gloucestershire, North Somerset area. So, as well as taking that the factory out of sight, obviously it takes this first aid unit out of action as well for 3 years. Whether or not it was used for first aid right at the end of the war, we're not sure. And it gets used for a number of other things. Anyway, so it's a series of different rooms. We are now in the main bit of the first aid unit. We're now going to go to a bit which isn't in the main bit of the first aid unit. So if you'd like to follow me. Health and safety catastrophe with signage.
What was the date in February?
27th of February. So in a moment we'll have a look in that room. So basically that's one of the main entrances coming in that room. Main entrances coming into this unit. Obviously the one you've also just come into as well. But you'd be coming through here into a decontamination passageway, because they were setting these things up in order, because they weren't really sure to what extent gas attacks, chemical attacks would be. And if you're trying to go into a first aid unit, you don't really want to be contaminated, really, do you? So that's really the thinking behind this. And in terms of the 7th of March, behind the door there's lots of rubble. Now, whether that's rubble immediately from the bombing raid or slightly later, or sort of brought together, as far as I'm aware, I don't know of any evidence of the entrance there being used by this underground facility after 1941. Clearly the one you've been through, and there's one at the back, were. So it may well be that is basically not been used since the war, at least.
So is there shelters underneath the factory?
There were, and they've just been cleared. Modern development goes on, life goes on, doesn't it? And so basically where the main bit of the factory is now, some of the shelters are just in front of that, really, about 13, 14. And when you come out, you'll just see if you have a quick look at the photographs, when you go out again, you'll see how many air raid shelters there were.
All right.
I think when they opened the tent up around the back, check with Sean, I'm sure they found some underground, maybe shelters, they're not sure where they were, but check with Sean on Monday. I know they found some underground things when they were putting the tent up.
Okay.
Right, so as Emma's here, and she will tell you that this is low ceiling and it's a high step.
It is, and I nearly fell. Yes,
Yes, do not do what the person in the tab on.
Yeah, no problem.
So as you see, there's more of the bomb. You can see how devastated it was, and it was. So basically, three years out of action.
I'm all right. Really low. I mean, it's probably
I'm absolutely fine.
It's probably
You're
all
all
right.
right. Just back up.
You're all right.
I'm sorry.
Just like.
You're all right.
Put it on, because I want to show and tell.
So when you've had a quick look, if you to follow along the
Sorry, Can you admit when
That's when the bombs came through the roof.
the big building that we saw before?
Over there, yeah. That's where the old press shop area. That's where it came through just there.
No, it's okay.
yeah, we have some industrial All right.
Be careful, baby. Good girl.
Right then, if we'd
Find this on now. I asked David, didn't I?
What's that bit higher?
I think we don't know why that's higher, why that's low compared to the rest of it. Maybe because it's an entrance, I guess, but it's just.
Right then, this is the decontamination passageway. So some of the things on the wall, the diagonal strip there you can see, and there's various things in here which suggest curtains and screens as part of the decontamination. So you'd come in there, you'd be decontaminated here before going into the first aid bit, and you'd be going through, at a certain point, about 1.5 inches of detergent. Think of some of those places you went to when you during the COVID period, having to go through. A bit like that. Yeah. So a drainage here. Once the detergent went above about 1.5 inches, it would drain away. And here we've got slots here where there'd be a sort of divide there to keep the detergent in, and then you'd be into the first aid unit properly. Anyway, so we'll move on now.
It's very good, isn't it?
So this is our mock-up. One of the things I need to say right at the start here is that we don't know certain exactly which was an office, which wasn't. But this rather suggests to me that this was an office and also first aid training. We know there were first aid training going on, so this is the likely place it would have been. We know from oral testimony that there were stretchers around, certainly during the bombing period, beds, but some of those things would have been used for first aid training. If you've got a broken leg, how could we move you properly so we can get you onto a stretcher? We've got a number of things there to give an idea of sort of light kind of health first aid that was being done. Lots of things like stitching. So think of a bombing raid with glass flying around and shrapnel, doing stitching, bandages, that's moving somebody onto a stretcher. This was Sister Hobbs' domain. She was the main medical professional here, had a team of people throughout the factory, and she's also a war hero because she tunnelled her way out of rubble, and half an hour later was back to work. And she had gone into the Daily Mirror. So doing that, the first thing she did was sew somebody's ear back on. Just a nice fun fact for you there. But it's also shared with the ARP, and they on certain evenings they would use this particular space to do some of their work. So that's effectively all I've got to sort of do today. Apart from perhaps to say it's still here, it's still being used. Whereas the air raid shelters were mainly cleared away to obviously make way for the modern factory. Here, of course, you've got a situation where it was used for all sorts of different research and development in the post-war period, coatings for washing machines, testing volume on tumble dryers and things like that, and also, dare I say this, with a member of staff that he was at, I think, a dumping ground possibly.
That would be the best way of calling it.
But I think every post-war factory of any note would probably have had somewhere like this for a dumping ground, I suspect. Anyways, if you need to know any more about World War II, apart from what you can see today, please do come and visit us at Yate Heritage Centre, because we've got a good archive, both Parnalls and World War II. So, yeah. Thank you very much.
Was that for the
That's for the ARP rattle, yeah, so to alert people. So.
did I think did that something else?
Yeah, I think I'll have a different.
Thank you for that one, yay!
Yeah, we should work out which way around to. Right then, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I think I'm probably due to my next. I better keep them. So it's just round to the. Oh, Emma, you can be at the back as she knows.
She's following everybody else here, so I'm great.
God, it's pretty big, isn't it? It's pretty big, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, I already did.